You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Moser. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Wednesday the 20th of June. Cameron snubs Argentinian president. A legal maniac hammers man over head with a brick. Is Germany funding £600 billion blackmail bailout for Greece, Spain and others? Pro-bailout vote in Greece is seen as inevitable. The health of ousted leader of Egypt worsens. Thought for the day, do men get a fair deal nowadays? UK News. Argentina's President, Cristina Kirchner, tried to pull a media stunt at the G20 summit this week. Whining Cristina, who wants the Falkland Islands back now that oil has been found off its shores, tried to give David Cameron an A4-sized brown envelope in front of cameras in a stunt over her protest of the Falkland Islands being British. David Cameron refused the envelope. One World at 8 writer commented, "I would have told her where she could put that envelope." Many British soldiers died in the Falklands War protecting British people who live on the islands from Argentinian aggression. A failed asylum seeker has finally been jailed after killing a man with a brick. Rostem Ahmadi launched a vicious random attack on 41-year-old Umesh Chaudhari just a few yards from the victim's home in Croydon, South London. Chaudhari, a Nepalese, was taken to hospital in Tooting but never recovered. Rostem Ahmadi was found guilty of murder in Croydon. He was also diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic. Ahmadi was on bail at time of the attack for robbing a woman. This maniac was supposedly from Afghanistan but lied to the authorities and is in fact from Iran. He claimed asylum in the UK in 2007 but was refused an extension of his leave to remain in October 2010. In February 2011 his appeal was dismissed and he should have left the UK. The judge said this crime was even more awful because Ahmadi should not have been in this country. In custody he was seen to punch the walls and heard saying, "Do you know why I punched someone? Because of Allah and jihad." A World at 8 reporter commented, "There should be more stringent rules put in place for people apparently claiming asylum here, medical tests for a start. We are allowing and keeping people in when they are physically and mentally ill. All sorts of eradicated plagues are coming in even as I write. This man has been detained indefinitely in an expensive mental home at the taxpayer's expense. Deport him back to Iran forthwith." Euronews. Confusion is currently surrounding whether Germany is prepared to back a blackmail bailout scheme to rescue the crumbling euro. It has been reported that last night European leaders were said to be inching towards a deal. German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who understood to be poised to announce that two Eurozone funds worth €750 billion, that is £605 billion, would be used to buy up the debts of Spain, Italy, Portugal, Greece and others. This would mean that Germany and the wealthy countries of Eurozone are underwriting the struggling member states. Sources are now saying that Germany may not be backing this package. Officials say this immense amount of money would be just a stopgap, whilst the erring countries would have to take steps towards a true fiscal union. A World at 8 reporter commented that this is an immense amount of blackmail money to stay in the Eurozone. Weak countries like Greece will jump at the chance to take money and not revert to their own currency as it should do. It seems a shame these countries have had the rug pulled out from under them, rather like a slap on the wrists from the Eurozone. Money talks and shit walks. A pro-bailout vote by the Greek people in elections recently is doing its best to steady the nerves of the Greek people. The bailout package is yet another get-out-of-jail-free card to the Greeks, whose economy is at its lowest ebb since joining the EU. For months people have been rooting in bins for food in some of the poorest areas of Greece and even buying used medication to treat their loved ones. All eyes are on Greece over the next coming months to see if it comes under the German boot yet again. The American presidential election result could rest on the outcome of the financial situation in Europe, sources in the US have stated. One paper commented that if the EU remains on its present course of austerity and bailouts, it could spell a bad result for Barack Obama. World News. The ex-leader of Egypt is in hospital. Ousted leader Hosni Mubarak was admitted to hospital after he had a series of strokes in prison. He has been moved to the army hospital in Cairo. Mubarak was jailed for life for causing the death of some protesters. There is no official statement but his condition is serious. Despite him being deposed, this situation does not bode well for the eventual outcome of the fight for power in Egypt and will have an even more destabilising effect within that country. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of people protested in Cairo's Tahrir Square against a move by the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces to assume new powers. Thought for the day: do men get a fair deal nowadays? Well, I think not, at least not in the media's eyes. We are treated regularly to adverts that show men, usually white men, behaving like loons, stumbling over masses of new furniture and being laughed at by his partner and her friend. Young white boys are undereducated and underfunded, and what is worse, under-encouraged, as if they leave the womb already knowing how to handle life and problems. All the media centres on now are young women, sexualising them, giving them the holy grail of Britain has not got talent, making them want to look like natives who have fallen into an orange bog or worse. Young white men get only football, and this has been taken over by our ethnic pals. No, men get a raw deal in this country, especially in the case of marriage and divorce. The two seem to go hand in hand. Now, the divorce laws changed in 1857 and allowed ordinary people to divorce. Up to that time, divorce was the prerogative of the wealthy. In 1937, this law was amended to include desertion, but the women still had to prove it. The largest change came in 1969 under the Divorce Reform Act, which brought out the no-fault divorce. I divorced my first husband during this Reform Act under the old law. It took a long time, and if you wanted a quiet divorce without named adultery, a paid correspondent had to be hired for the guilty party, in this case my husband, and the petitioner, me, had to appear in court. Although I missed the so-called new law, this new law has opened the floodgates for easy divorce and no guilt on either side. Of course, one or both parties are guilty of something, even if not adultery, rape, incest, desertion, cruelty, bestiality and other heinous crimes, even if it is just sheer boredom. But in many cases nowadays we have the problem of children. Now, under the auspices of the old laws, a woman once she married became her husband's chattel, and so more importantly did her wealth, and the children that were produced, they were her husband's goods. This discouraged divorce in the less than wealthy for many, many years. If a woman left the home, she left alone and penniless, despite the many wrongs her husband might have inflicted. The message was simple: you marry, so stick it out, girl. Now, I'm not a woman's libber by any stretch, but this old law was old-fashioned and draconian. However, now a woman can get away with murder under the new law. A girl can marry a guy, have a couple of kids, buy a large house, maybe contribute some earnings to it, and then after a few years start to get lonely and bored. She can nowadays get hubby to move out, move in her new lover, and the poor old husband has to pay the mortgage and the expenses of said house, as the brats are too young to be moved. Also, the poor devil has to assume grovelling position to actually get to see the children he is paying for. The pendulum has swung from terrible for women to terrible for men. The whole thing is bad for families and family life as we would like it. Youngsters now appear to get married for the actual wedding day and hen nights before, if not to really form any real undertaking in life. Now, I have divorced 2 husbands, but when I married them, I thought I would be married for the rest of my life. We didn't have hen parties in either day, and weddings were kept to a reasonable price. Businesses jumping on the bandwagon with wedding planners and themes and odd places to marry in are just a symbol of how lightly we treat marriage in the UK today. We have idealised marriage and taken the American way of marriage to heart, or rather the celebrity ideal of it. When I was over in the States, I saw many more middle-aged and elderly married couples still together than in good old Blighty. As usual, the Brits have taken the wrong end of the picture and adopted it. Back to fathers. They have a generally tough time with ex-wives, especially if they have children. Fathers, although they seem to see very little of their kids when married, this is usually due to working to keep a home above their heads, seem to need these children more when the marriage breaks up. It is natural to cling to what you know. In fact, some fathers do become obsessed with their offspring when apart, which makes some mothers' behaviour questionable. Most of these women seem to make the children a financial bouncing ball when hubby leaves or is pushed out. They often do not want the father around, but they want his money. New lovers rarely take on another man's offspring immediately, and often women do not want to take on another woman's children if the husband has strayed. The family and social network has been broken down for years now. A moving population gathers no friends. When someone's unhappy in their marriage, they now go for a drink with their best mate, who immediately says, "You don't have to put up with that, you should leave." That's usually bad advice. In previous generations, the couple would have received family or local support to work on their relationship, and the marriage would have survived the rocky patch. Even middle-aged women are being encouraged to find themselves and be alone. Not a good idea, either financially or mentally. Unless you're very wealthy and can travel, you might be stuck in a bedsit in Worthing all alone. They don't say that in these stupid magazines. They also do not say that if a new guy has a choice of a 30-year-old tush and a 55-year-old tush, which one is he going to take? Answers on a postage stamp, please. Find yourself. Oh dear, back to the guys. I do feel sorry for the many men who have been damaged under the new liberal divorce law for so many years. There was an article in the Telegraph by Louis de Bernières, who understands the pain of being kept apart from his children. Here he reveals how the family justice system fails many fathers. The reply he sent to David Cameron on his article about absent fathers. Mothers often try to move long distances away to ensure that contact is in fact impossible, and children find themselves saddled with a stepfather of whose existence they may have been previously unaware, says Louis de Bernières. A year ago, David Cameron wrote an article for this newspaper, damning feckless and absent fathers. We need to make Britain a genuinely hostile place for fathers who go AWOL, he said. It's high time runaway dads were stigmatised and the full force of shame was heaped upon them. They should be looked at like drink drivers, people who are beyond the pale. Like thousands of other fathers, I snorted with derision and contempt when I read it and have felt too angry to respond to it until now. Unmeasured public rage can be facilely dismissed as a kind of madness. This is part of my reply to Cameron. Dear Prime Minister, you seem to be unaware that the principal reason that fathers become estranged from their families is that the family justice system is institutionally gender biased. A father has to fight bitterly to get what is automatically awarded to mothers, and if he has no money he cannot even do this. Fair outcomes are reserved for people like me who can afford them. Fathers get pillaged of their assets and are told they cannot have their children overnight because their bedsits are unsuitable. They get accused of sexual or physical violence, so they cannot see their children for months while the accusations are deleterially investigated. That is the end of Louis de Bernières' letter. But this and previous governments have been anti-white and pro-female. The poor man is penalised, and it is usually because of a divorce that they have lost their jobs. The burden on a second marriage is intolerable, so they are unable to move on. Once again laws have been changed and they have left out the person with the least means legally. Common sense has left some women, and they marry men from different cultures. Cultures which do not allow the women any rights of access at all to their children. And these are the women who create headlines stealing their children back from foreign countries. Ladies, you can help who you fall in love with. Don't marry a foreigner, let alone a Muslim, because he will keep his children and let you go. You have done your job. This government are apparently reviewing the laws to make it easier for fathers to see their children, but it will go the way of all laws and be down to the individual mother, and the feelings of the father will not be considered. If he demands access, it will be limited because of his unreasonable behaviour around the little darlings, and so on regardless. I know of some mothers who use the ex-husbands as babysitting devices at their whim and command. The children do not enter the equation, just the free time mummy has to have. None of my 3 children from a very early age had the masculine input, and I know it has affected them in adult life. My first husband had full access and didn't use it at all ever in 10 years. I eventually got him to see his 2 children when they were 13 and 15, and it was very odd. They didn't remember him, and he was very strained. This access lasted over 6 months and 2 occasions, and then he stopped it. My second husband took our son aged 7 out twice, and then was forbidden to see him again by his new partner, and indeed he died a year later. Now that is all personal, but I find it easy to feel sorry for the men who want to see their children, and didn't want their relationship to break up in the first place. It must be heartbreaking for them, especially as society works against them in so many ways. I'm not saying to make divorce difficult again, but maybe make marriage more difficult, or make divorce not so normal after such a short time. Marriages are like businesses, some good, some bad, some awful, some funny, some successful and some failures, but all need to be worked at. A large house, 2.1 children, a husband who is actually working, is now expected, not worked for. We all expect homes like footballers' wives and perfect children, and to be successful in all we do, when it is the mistakes in life we learn by, not the successes. We in ProFam want to champion the cause of fathers because fathers are an integral part of bringing children into the world and giving them the other side of the coin. The input of fathers should never be denigrated. It is because Western society has denigrated fathers that the UK especially is a female-only zone, and a bunch of more unhappy, unsuccessful and lonely women I cannot imagine. Why do you think young girls have to drink themselves into oblivion Friday nights and end up in the gutter or worse? Lack of father control. My father died when I was only a few months old, but you can and do miss what you never had. It should not be the same for generations of youngsters growing up virtually alone. Marriage is tough, divorce is tougher, believe me, and it is the children who always pay. There is only amicable divorce where no one suffers in the books or in the minds of these committees who oversee our social engineering. There ain't no such animal. There is always someone to pay the price, and it is usually the father. The family and the church used to be the backbone of England. What is it now? You tell me. And finally, if you have $100 million, you could be flying high in more than just in exclusive circles. A space agency placed a price tag on a flight to the moon. One person commented, "You can become the next Neil Armstrong for just $100 million. The flight includes zero-gravity breakfast, dinner and tea, and a step on the moon. A bargain in the eyes of the super rich." This World at 8 presenter comments, "I could think of so much to do with $100 million that could be so much nicer. Imagine scrambled eggs and champagne with zero gravity. It's not a good thought." You have been listening to The World at 8. I'm Lynn Mozart and I wish you all a very good night.